One. Hello, everybody. Hi. We are live. My name is Saudi Garcia, and I am here representing Incultured Company. And we are here live because we are going to discuss this campaign that we have launched. I wanna show you screen share. In a minute, I want to screen share, but we're here to discuss the hashtag Real Dominicans Are Not Anti-Haitian campaign, Dominicanos Reales No Son Anti-Haitianos, and we have like an amazing group of people here, so I want to just make space for them to introduce themselves. Who wants to start?
I can start. Hi, my name is Isanet Batista, she, her, and I am a queer Black Dominican woman. My family is from Valverde Mau in the Dominican Republic, and I'm the creator of Woke Foods, and I'm also in farm school, and hopefully soon we'll be launching a project in the Dominican Republic called the Mamatingo Educational Farm Cooperative, which is looking to buy land and have that land be co-owned by Dominican Haitians and Dominican Haitian people to heal land-based trauma and also create opportunities for folks in both agriculture and tourism.
Awesome. Who wants to go next?
I can go. Hey, y'all. My name is Alexis Francisco. I use he, him pronouns. I was born in Santiago, raised between Washington Heights and the Bronx. I like to say that I live and work at the intersections of spirituality, healing, and social change work. And I do that professionally as a community organizer and facilitator in the Bronx, as a social worker and mental health counselor. I study religion, and I'm currently a part of the ministry at New Day Church in the Bronx. And basically my life is about trying to bring together these, or like lifting up the intersections of these three worlds of healing, organizing, and spirituality. And it relates to this work because I'm, I have the privilege of being one of the facilitators for Incultured Company along with Saudi, France, and Cassandra, where I specifically have been bringing a conversation about the role of historical trauma in shaping the conditions that we see on the island, and shaping our reactions to and ability to engage this conversation and what happens, what comes up for us conversation and trying to do this work. And the work of healing from white supremacy, from colonialism, from anti-Blackness, from anti-Haitianismo. And the ways in which the healing is such an important and critical piece of shifting the conditions that have been doing violence and continue to do violence on our people on the island. Happy to be here with y'all tonight.
Awesome. So I guess I'll finish up. My name is Mabelin Cedeño. I was born in Santo Domingo. I'm originally from La Romana. I was raised in between, living the majority of my life in between La Romana and Washington Heights and Providence, Rhode Island. I am the executive admin for the Afro-Latino Diaspora platform. And we do a lot of work centered around the defense of Black bodies in Latin America through the, re-educating and decolonizing the education that we have been raised with. And so I have a background in teaching. I have been a teacher in the Dominican Republic. I taught 7th and 8th graders down there for a couple of years. I've also done a lot of decolonizing work as far as partnering up with Dominicans Love Haitians Too, with Claribel Ruiz, doing a lot of work when it comes to the defense of Blackness and reframing the idea of Dominicans being anti-Haitian, and kind of reworking the way that we have been taught to view Blackness from the Dominican gaze.
So I realized I did not introduce myself, so I'll do it quickly. And thanks for that awesome introduction, Maybelline. My name is Saudi Garcia. I have to say I'm a little nervous. That's okay. My name is Saudi Garcia. I was born in Moca, Dominican Republic. I immigrated to the United States, to New York in 2003. And I'm currently a doctoral student at NYU. I study Dominican culture, history, and politics. And my interest really is thinking about health and technology in the context of the Dominican Republic, thinking about ways that our society can be healthier and also uplift our own cultural values. So my work really is at this intersection between health, technology, and Blackness. My work has been deeply influenced by the Afro-Dominican women in my life, like Isanet, who's a close friend. My work has been deeply influenced by seeing the organizing that has been happening around health and health equity in my community. And so I want to uplift that work and have been in that journey to go in that direction. I'm also an activist and an organizer. I have done some facilitation and teaching work in the Bronx with youth. And I have been really invested over the past 2 years in this project of decolonizing Dominican identity from my standpoint as a writer, as a researcher, as an educator, as a facilitator, doing everything that I can to make sure that that actually is a future for us. So I'm actually going to take myself off and show you all our screen.
I can't hear her.
She's gonna show us. She was gonna show us something. I think she's coming back. Oh, these are the collection of the photos of the hashtag Real Dominicans Are Not Anti-Haitian.
Yeah. So I don't think we can hear you.
How many? Yeah, we can't hear her.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Were you asking how many what?
How many photos of folks taken using the hashtag?
I believe that the hashtag has been used over 300 times within the past week.
Wow, that's great.
If I'm not mistaken. That was the last number I saw. Saudi, we couldn't hear you. We saw all the images. Can you explain what you were showing us?
Yeah, so I wanted to take the time to just like show you the pictures and to show like the feed on Instagram, to also just take a moment to acknowledge like what has been accomplished this past week, right? And to just tell like thank you all for being part of that, for sharing, you know, the hashtag has been shared nearly 400 times in a week. That's pretty significant. And so I wanted to lead with that because that's an accomplishment, right? To start the conversation in this way is a huge accomplishment. So I wanted just to like see the images and visualize that, you know?
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I wanted to take the time to actually say thank you. It takes a lot of valor and a lot of foresight to start something like that hashtag movement. So honestly, from the bottom of my heart, as a Dominican, I want to take the time to thank you, Saudi, for even starting, you know, this campaign behind that hashtag. It definitely means a lot, and it's just the beginning.
Exactly. So I do have some questions, some like loose sort of prompts to kind of move through. It's an informal conversation, but there are some questions that I had, right? So, you know, I wanted to ask you all, right? What in your life's path has brought you to hashtag Real Dominicans Are Not Anti-Haitian, right? Before we even break down what the hashtag means, right? What in your personal experience has brought you to this conclusion for yourself that you wanted to support this campaign in this way? Anyone can
I guess I'll start. For me, it was the conversation that you and I had on a live that we did together on February 27th. It's one of those things where I feel like it should have happened forever ago. It's a hashtag that means more than just a trend. I think that this is probably going to be one of the things that our generation is going to be remembered for, as far as the type of work that we're trying to do. And, showing support and solidarity to a message like that was very important. I've only been back in the United States for about 4 months now. I was in DR for the vast majority of 2018. And before that, I was going to med school a couple years ago in La UCE in San Pedro Macorís. And so the things that I witnessed within the medical, field, as many of you guys know, DR doesn't have the infrastructure that medicine has here in the United States. So a lot of times they use medical students as CNAs or as RNs, and we would do the grunt work for the doctors. And the amount of dehumanizing and just downright oppressive systems that I saw being applied towards darker skinned Dominicans and specifically targeted against Haitians in the Dominican Republic within medicine, within education, within the workforce in general, is absolutely disgusting. And I think that people like you starting something, as simple as a hashtag is so groundbreaking, that I don't think that we should take it lightly. So the minute that I saw that you were, starting this, I was like, absolutely, I have to jump on this. I have to, use our platform to create visibility for it, to create solidarity, and to support it.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Yeah. So for me, I think there has been different moments in my life where it's been clear to me that both Dominican Haitians living in the DR and also immigrants that from Haiti that live in the DR are seen as less than. And so, like many other Dominicans, I grew up with a lot of comments that were rooted in anti-Haitian sentiment. And I mean, I don't want to repeat them because, I just feel like they're violent and hurtful. But it was, just comments always related to darker skin tones being bad, to them taking our jobs, to they need to like stay on their side. Very similar to the comments that a lot of white people here in the U.S. share about immigrants and people of color that are living here in the U.S. But I think a defining moment for me was in 2014. I had the opportunity to move to the Dominican Republic and work as a teacher there, and it coincided with, I don't know if it was the passing or the just like implementation of Resolution TC 1068/13. Which was stripping Dominican people of Haitian descent of their citizenship, and was definitely like led to like more violent attacks towards towards Dominican Haitian people, and also darker skinned Dominicans also. And I remember being in my school, and sometimes like being outside in patio, and I would see the immigration trucks come into our callejones and like take people out of their homes with like baby in hand, no feet, no shoes on, because they were probably cooking, because it was usually like around like lunchtime. And like they were just being like, can we just get our shoes, or can we get this? And they would not allow them to do that. And I wanted to do something, but I felt like I couldn't, because I also understood that that police enforcement, immigration is different. And so that if I were to like lead a protest or something, I could get like hit in the face with the long rifles that they carry. And then other experiences that we had, they were also coming to our schools. And I remember a specific time where they took one of our teachers who had his cédula, but just because they recognized him as Dominican Haitian, they took him to a nearby immigration detention center. And it was only because the executive director of a nonprofit was a white American woman that he got out, because she would like often be the savior to go be representative of our teachers, and the people that worked in our school that were Dominican Haitian. And that was really the only reason they would be let out. But aside from that, I was also seeing the different relationships that were forming and not forming in my own classroom. And so I was teaching middle school students, and there were so many different anti-Haitian sentiments that was being spread in the classroom, that was really like disrupting their learning. And I mean, there was just so much misinformation that they had. And at the time, I think I was teaching English, and I had to change the whole curriculum. And I started teaching them real Dominican history. I mean, I was learning myself while teaching them, and like was reading as much as I could, was showing them as many videos as I could, was bringing in as many guest speakers as I could, because it was ridiculous and it was so hurtful and violent. And over time, you know, like the prejudicial comments started being less and less, and more solidarity started forming amongst the students. And for me, that was like both healing for me, but I think also allowed me to see what could really happen if people just understood the facts, saw their struggles as one, and really understood that like there's really no, aquí no somos enemigo, and understood that, you know, we have these books that our students are still reading that I think haven't really been changed since the dictatorship, or very little have changed since the dictatorship of Trujillo, who was trying to like whiten our Dominicans through different ways. And so we learned everything from like real Dominican history, Haitian history, and also the ways that Trujillo was trying to whiten Dominicans. So learning about why he accepted as many Jewish people that were escaping the Holocaust into the island, and why there's such like an honoring of Jews. Like when I was teaching in Puerto Plata, and we have like a Jewish museum in Puerto Plata, and like starting to see the connections of like, if you think that Dominican Haitians being in the island has hurt us, then and that's what you want to stick by, then stick by that. But you should also learn all the ways that our relationships with foreign European countries have hurt us and continue to impact us today. So like understanding the ways that like sex tourism is what it is because of all the relationships that we have created with Germany and Poland, and like a lot of the countries, a lot of the people that came from Jewish people that came from the countries in Europe. And so like really understanding that. And then I had the opportunity to come back to New York in 2016, and I met Saudi through Heidi Maria Lopez, who started this collective of Dominican women in Washington Heights that were looking to address anti-Haitian sentiment in our community. And so it was through La Sala about 3 years ago that we put on this event called Reclamando Nuestra Independencia, right on February 27th, 2016. And in that event, we were really just looking to have a dialogue about why we celebrate this independence. And also we were looking to explore other ways of separating ourselves from other lies, like pharmaceuticals and food and all these other ways to reclaim our independence. But the biggest surprise to me was at the time was how hard Dominicans went to try to destroy this event. There were so many threats that were sent to us on Facebook. They like flooded our Facebook page event with pictures of Haitian people covered in blood. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then they also had the nerve to show up to the event, like passing out propaganda and calling us anti-Dominican, which they're doing now with the hashtag, and also saying that if we love Africa so much that we should go back. And then the next surprising thing that happened with that event was that we did have security and they ended up leaving, but there were people that stayed at the event who were recording to, I guess, spy on us, but at the end started participating. And like, so you can they started to like almost enjoy themselves.
Yeah.
Because really the event was really rooted in healing and understanding and like unifying us and like really like uncovering what it is that we were celebrating. And so it was like, if we are going to celebrate, let's celebrate some other things, right? And then let's really learn what we consider our Independence Day. And so, yeah, so all those sort of things is what really led me to support this campaign. And I'm really thankful to all the folks of In Culture, because I really sent Saudi a message. I was like, yo, in 2 days is our Independence Day. Like, what's going to go down? Because I'm like, I'm not celebrating this. And I refuse to be scrolling on my timeline, looking at all my, like, my friends. My friends celebrate Dominican Independence Day. Looking at all my friends, be like, I'm so proud to be Dominican. And me being the only person on the side, like, this is not Dominican Pride Day. This is not Independence Day. So thank you because, it wasn't just like creating a hashtag. It definitely took conversations and planning with urgency to get this going. And so 3 years ago, we had that big event. And this year we have this hashtag. And I know that each year we're going to continue to do different things to really bring like real light to what this day is and isn't. So thank you.
That was awesome. Thank you for taking me back in memory lane. Because they did enjoy themselves. And that was the funny part. It's like we're talking about how to heal your soul, your body, and your spirit. And that's what this is about in so many ways. But who wants to go next? Is it Alexis?
Yeah, I'll just add, thank you both for that. I'll just add briefly that besides my own sort of experiences of having seen and heard and felt all the things that you do when you hear the kinds of things said and done around you that you both just described when being with my family on the island. I think for me, the stark moment of sort of beginning of this journey for me really was probably sitting with my dad at a diner in Riverdale. I think it was in the wake of the non-indictment for the officer who killed Eric Garner, and really wrestling with with what that meant for us and what that meant for this for this country and what it meant for this city that was erupting in protest in the wake of that. And my dad was just like kind of wondering, like, why are you so involved in this? Like, I had started to get really active in organizing in the city and was really moved to to come out in support of what was like the sort of beginnings of the Black Lives Matter movement. And my dad was just not getting that, and it got me really, and it really was confronting me with both like having already experienced all the ways that anti-Blackness showed up in our own family and divided people along my own family, inside of my own family, and hearing from my dad in particular, the very real experiences of trauma that he has lived with growing up in the DR, being a Black man himself in a family that is deeply, deeply that has a lot of deep anti-Black tendencies and positions, and folks that are embedded in different political arenas in the country, that resulted in like having experienced anti-Blackness at the hands of his own family at times, but then having a hard time understanding his own solidarity with African Americans that are experiencing police violence in this country, and sort of wrestling with what it means, how people that are racialized as Latinos, even if we're Black in the United States, are distanced from African Americans. And that sort of began my journey of kind of like going deeper into what it means to be Dominican, and what is this identity that we have as Black people from a Spanish-speaking Caribbean country that are racialized in the particular ways that we are. And so, my dad and I talk about my dad a lot in my conversation with folks about this. My dad and I have been on a journey around this together. We started reading together and really wrestling with what this meant for us. Relearning the history that, for me, in some ways, it was learning my own history for the first time from scholars like Ginetta Candelario. Black Behind the Ears has been like a seminal book for me in terms of understanding myself and understanding my relationship to the island. But really being able to be wrestling with that history and what it meant for me and my relationships with my family, the people who I love, in new ways, and thinking about, so what, and in order to understand the ways that we're positioned as Dominicans in New York City and in this country, and the role that we are playing in the game of white supremacy and anti-Blackness here in the U.S., we have to take it back to the island and understand the ways that anti-Blackness and Haitianismo plays. And of course, in the wake of the 2013 sentencia, it was like undeniable on the world stage. Like, here is our country, our nation has done the thing that no one else has done. They have stripped people of nationality, they have rendered people stateless, and we have a responsibility to that. So and really the Independence Day conversation, my deepening understanding of that conversation in particular, is thanks to We Are All Dominican, the We Are All Dominican Collective. Last year launched the 1865 hashtag, and we're really talking about like, y'all, what is this day that we're celebrating? Like, it's the day to be really hype about being Dominican, and I love it, and I feel any opportunity to like be really hype, dance and get crazy and whatever, I'm here for that. But also, like, what is it that we're celebrating? What is it that we're reinscribing into ourselves every year when we celebrate this day, right? Because this is the thing that in every year we are reenacting this drama of being in this conflict with Haiti, this story of invasion, right? This story that really like number one is an illusion, is based in a fallacy, right? It's a story that has been concocted for very particular reasons on our island. And every year we reenact that. And our biggest moment of pride is tied to this story of violence and animosity towards Haiti that then makes this conflict almost like eternal. We will every year be celebrating this false conflict with Haiti. And that is fueling the violence that we're seeing on the island. That is fueling the conversations that people are having or not having in our families. That is fueling our conversations around Blackness or not here, on the island or here in this country if we're living in diaspora. And so this, for me, was just an opportunity to go deeper into that conversation together and saying, and for me, as somebody who grew up in the States, who grew up in diaspora, one of the ways that folks come at me to try to shut me down is to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about because you grew up in New York. Questioning whether or not I'm a real Dominican, right? Or we are real, what is a real Dominican, right? And really, because this notion of anti-Haitianismo has become so central to some of our ideas of what it means to be Dominican, is to say, actually, like, no, that whole conversation, like, no, we're just gonna like dead that right away and say, what does it mean to be a real Dominican? Actually, in this moment, we don't have to continue to play out this narrative that has been handed to us, that has been created for to control us and manipulate us. We actually get to define who we are today. And who are we going to be? In this moment, who are we going to choose to be as a people, separate from the history that we've been playing out? And so, it's just been beautiful. And I'm so grateful for everybody that has really taken a stand and been and taken this bold, been bold enough to take a picture and post it, because I know it doesn't come, and to entertain all the conversations that come from that, the attacks from the trolls that have been coming in the last few days nonstop. I have had some incredible conversations, some really challenging conversations in my family about this that have really led to some real breakthroughs and some movement and some shifting, and at least some being in relationship in ways in which we weren't able to be in the past. So it's been really beautiful to see this in the last couple of days.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing in your family into the conversation, because this is what this is all about. You know, it's about creating a space for people to be brave and for people to have a difficult conversation that otherwise they wouldn't have around this time of the year. And so for me, like, first of all, I'm feeling a lot of feelings as we're having these conversations. We're speaking our experience, and I'm like getting chills, and I'm thinking about my own experiences that I've witnessed, right? And so I think it's important to acknowledge, and we think and talk about this all the time, like the impact that this has on our bodies and our consciousness. And all the time, we don't have the opportunity to actually like process these things, right? And that's a real thing, right? So I think for me, like I remember being a kid, right? And I was in school in the DR up until the 5th grade. And around the 4th grade or so, I remember being in front of the gate of my school, and across the gate was a young Haitian girl. She must have been around my age, maybe like 7 years old, right? And I was like really confused, because I was like, shouldn't she be in school? Like, why is she not in school? Right? I was like, why am, you know, like it was imagining two kids meeting across a fence. And, you know, me thinking like, what's going on here, right? So I think I remember that moment because it's inscribed in my mind for a reason, right? The work that I have been called to do in the world departs from that moment of being like, there's nothing that makes that person, that girl, different from me, right? There's nothing that makes her different from me. So why am I having a very different experience than she's having, right? So little by little, like I became politicized in the time that Black Lives Matter kicked off, right? And I realized that for me, like the Black Lives Matter work that I want to do in the world has to do with anti-Blackness among Dominicans, and it has to do with anti-Haitianismo among Dominicans, right? Because I am of this country, but I'm not of this country, right? The same issues that are happening in the US around police brutality, around anti-immigration, around historical and cultural erasure, around, you know, all kinds of issues that we have here in the US are happening in the DR. The only thing is that people are not having the conversation, they're not acknowledging it, or they're exhausted, right? There are folks that I know who have been doing this work for generations, right? I want to uplift some of their names, right? Maribel Núñez, Xiomara Fortuna, Marily Gallardo, Sonia Pierre, right? The freedom fighter, Mama Tingo, right? These are the people who have been doing this work for generations, right? And they got us this far. And I realized that like my responsibility as a Dominican is to keep going, right? To pick up where they left off and keep going. So I've done that in whatever ways I can, right? As an educator, you know, I have done some youth development work in the summertime at a summer camp in the DR and in Sable, where, you know, we're seeing young Haitian girls being severely bullied for being Haitian and having that ethnicity, right? For being born in the DR, but having Haitian parents and therefore having to be ashamed of themselves. How would it feel for me as a Dominican woman here in the US to be shamed for my cultural identity, right? I wouldn't feel good about that. I wouldn't want that to be my experience. So I've done this work in many different ways. And each manifestation brings me closer to the truth, right? Of the responsibility that Dominicans have, right? And I'm not saying that because I'm in the diaspora, I have language privilege, I have access, I have resources. I'm not saying that it's my responsibility to go in as a like, you know, Dominican American savior and like enlighten. No, like actually we were talking, Marilyn and I were talking, we want to sit at the feet of our elders, right? And have these conversations and keep this work going, right? So I see this hashtag campaign as another manifestation, right? Every year we do something different, right? Last year with Rural Dominican was the hashtag 1865 campaign, uplifting our decolonization and our guerrilla war against Spain between 1863 and 1865, right? Another really pivotal moment for me came with reading the work of Lorgia Garcia Peña, who's an incredible cultural studies professor and an incredible literature writer. Oh, una ambulancia, una fire truck. She's an incredible literature professor, and she has written and like got all the receipts, right, on how the story of Dominicanidad was constructed, right? You take things that happen, right? You take things that happen, and then you paint them through your own perspective, right? And then that creates an entire national myth that happens all the time, right? And that's exactly what happened in the DR. So I said, well, if they created a myth, right, I want to transform that story into a story that's really rooted in solidarity and that's really rooted in building a sustainable future for Hispaniola, right? Building a sustainable future for the first place where there were Black people in the Americas ever, right? That's what I want to work on. That's what I want to focus on. So that's where my desire for this kind of comes from, basically.
Saudi, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why do you guys choose to call it Hispaniola? Every time I hear someone calling it Hispaniola and not by its like original Taino name, I cringe, because that's definitely the colonizers, dubbed title for our land. So I'm interested in knowing like what prompted Encultured Co. and what prompted you guys to call it Hispaniola whenever you do this kind of like decolonizing work.
It's a really good question. Okay, I'm gonna kick it to Alexis. I just talk a lot. Sorry to put you on the spot.
So, I mean, this is a question that we get a lot, and it's really a question, and for all the reasons that you already kind of are alluding to, it's like, why would we refer to the island in the name that Spain gave it, right? Because they called it Little Spain, right? It's like specifically like pointing at this sort of this particular vestige of the colonial experience, right? But some of it was actually just the important thing about our decolonizing Hispaniola. The most important thing for us is that folks can be in the room together. Folks that are Dominican and Haitian can get in the room together and have the hard conversation, wrestle with that hard conversation that we're trying to have in that space about looking at the situation on the island from these various different perspectives, right? Thinking about this historical narrative as it exists both on the Dominican side and the Haitian side, thinking about the legal issues that have arisen, thinking about trauma, thinking about spirituality. And it really became a question of like, and the way I've heard Franz talk about this in this sort of initial imaginings of what this workshop would look like, the decision was made that if we called it Haiti, right, which is one of the indigenous names for the island, that Dominicans have been so socialized to not even recognize that term as an identifier for the island or really associate it solely with the nation of Haiti, that like, would people even understand that this is a space that they need to be in, right? That would we understand that this is a space that we need to be in? Quisqueya is one of the other names that's been lifted up as indigenous. And folks on the Haitian side are like, this is not a name that means anything for them, right? This is the name, I don't know, maybe Saudi as a resident historian, you can share a little bit for me about where that word Quisqueya comes from. What I understand is that this has been uplifted as also a term that is Taino in origin, referring to the island, but is not a name that's recognized by Haitian folks, right? So it's like, how do we actually recognizing the imperfect nature of like any name that we're going to use for this and to be recognized for all folks to understand it? How do we name it something so that we can get everybody in the room facing each other, eye to eye, seeing one another, and then deconstruct together in that space? Why do we call this Hispaniola? Why are we having feelings about this? And have that conversation together, face to face.
So it's a trap.
It's a friendly, loving trap.
It's a trap.
I love it. Yes.
So, I think one thing to address is this idea of like real Dominican, because, and I think that's really crucial, right? Because a lot of people really want to prove their authenticity. I don't know if this is the same case with other ethnic groups. So like Dominicans are real, they go really hard for like their authenticity, right? And I think that actually is the case for Dominicans in the diaspora, and also like a reaction, right, to the narratives of exclusion that people have faced. It's like, oh, you don't live here, so you're not Dominican, right? Well, you have a Haitian parent, so you're not Dominican, right? There's like this anxiety of affirming our Dominicanidad all the time, right? And so I want to, I was sitting in the car with friends. We were like, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? We need a hashtag, right? And I said, all right, real Dominicans are not in Haitian. And we're like, okay, that's it. This is it, right? And the reason why I particularly gravitated towards that is that it's really pointing out like the fallacy. I think it's doing two things, right? In my opinion, right? It's highlighting or bringing to mind like the idea that how do we construct the real, right? What does it mean to be real Dominican, right? There's so much that can fit within that, right? But so far, the only story to be real Dominican is that you must be anti-Haitian, you must be anti-Black, right? Mm-hmm. So that got under some people's skins, right? The idea that we're questioning the authenticity of your Dominicanidad because your Dominicanidad is actually in opposition to just another set of human beings, right? Mm-hmm. So it's expanding the meaning of Dominicanidad. And then another thing I was thinking about was the campaigns that have been launched around like decolonizing your masculinity, right? Real men, X, Y, and Z, right? None of this is not problematic. That's not the case. Like, I understand that. But it was a way to sort of like take back a little bit of power and say, no, like my authenticity as a Dominican is grounded in the real story of solidarity and love that has flourished between people who were supposed to hate each other, right? Mm-hmm. That's where my real Dominicanidad is rooted. It's rooted in the 1865 victory that we won with the help of our Haitian neighbors against Spain, right? It's rooted in all the struggle for decolonization and anti-imperialism that has been fought, and it's never been just a singular struggle, right? It's always been between two. And so like, there are questions about it, and I want to know how you all kind of feel about the hashtag.
I mean, I think I think it's really important for all the reasons you've mentioned. In my experience, I don't come into this work through like an academic standpoint. Like, I didn't study all of this. I think I really started to understand my own history, like I mentioned, like in 2014. And then when I moved back to New York, there was a time where I lived with Saudi and she had all the books. So I was like, oh my God. And I just started like reading. And so like, I think when I have friends who are also like, I don't think this is right, but I also don't know my history. So I'm not really understanding this, but I do know in my heart that it is not okay to say hateful, racist things about our sister island. And so I think creating the hashtag creates an opportunity for people that may not have access to information, but these days a lot of people have access to phones, specifically social media, and they can click on the hashtag and find information and like find that Facebook, that Instagram live that y'all did on the 27th, and like really like learn a little bit, and if anything, at least get titles to some books that they can go research after. And so I think that's really important, to provide information that's accessible to everyone. And in addition to that, it also for me is interesting and really funny how this hashtag is really what's pushing a lot of people to then do an anti-campaign to this hashtag, and reminds me of what happened 3 years ago with Reclamando Nuestra Independencia, and also what happened, I think, last year with 1865, that they only come up to defend these facts whenever we do anything. But before we say anything, it's always like funny memes and videos of like merengue, whatever it is. It's like Dominican pride. But as soon as we like put anything about solidarity and love and healing between the two islands, it's like, you're attacking our Dominican pride. This is sort of the voice I'm putting that I think is how they sound behind those keyboards. And I mean, we're seeing it right now. I didn't know that we had comments, but I was like, oh, we have comments. And yeah, there's a bunch of folks right now like saying that we're anti-Dominican, and that's a big lie. It is because we love our people and we love our families that we don't want any of us to feel hatred and discomfort about our identities, our history, and other people, because that is not good for our health. If we're talking about, you know, health amongst us, like to feel hatred, to feel like people are gonna take stuff from you is not the way to live, y'all. Like, we are abundant beings. We can have it all. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And so I really want people that are listening right now to understand that this campaign, the 1865 campaign, any other event, dialogue, social media video event that we do is really rooted in healing, in abundance, in harmony, and in love.
I kind of want to piggyback off of that, if you don't mind, Alexis. I said your name right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the things that I find interesting is the fact that usually these people come out of the woodwork whenever it has to do with the defense of Blackness. These are the same people that don't accolade any type of their energy towards, you know, Dominican pride and the defense of Dominicanness whenever you're talking about all of the European entities that are ripping our country apart. And so these are the people that you don't see combating the amount of corruption that exists within our government system. These are the people that you don't see that are combating. And you said something earlier that I also want to highlight. You know, the amount of feminicides in the Dominican Republic right now, it's alarming. The amount of Black women being targeted by their either sexual counterparts or by whatever patriarchal figure, you know, father figure they might have in their household, the amount of women, you know, being murdered at the hands of other Dominican men, it's alarming. And none of these people that are super Dominican, that are so proud to be Dominican, are defending these other Dominican bodies. You know, the amount of Dominicans being displaced from their homes and their land by all of these companies that are coming through, and, you know, with the aid of the PLD, with the aid of the current government, have basically robbed people of their land and now are creating multi-billion-dollar resorts all over the Dominican Republic. The average Dominican doesn't even have access to the majority of the most beautiful beaches on our island because they have all been privatized by white European entities that are coming through and robbing us of that. And so I think it's so interesting that we're always talking about Dominican pride whenever we're combating the people that are doing like a counterattack on the type of work that we're doing. But these are the same people that don't have some sort of counterattack when it comes to white entities, you know, ripping apart Dominican identity and ripping apart Dominican sovereignty or Dominican, you know, stability or Dominican food security, or, you know what I'm saying, or educational security. And so I think it's crazy considering the amount of, for instance, I believe you mentioned that earlier as well, the amount of European men that come and take part in sex trafficking and sex work of young children. It's pedophilic. It's not even sex work. It's literally child sexual labor. The vast majority of these white men that are either Italian, Spanish, German, that come Canadian, U.S. Americans that go to places like Bayaibe, that go to places like Osua, that go to Samaná, that go to Punta Cana. There are burdeles that are specific towards, you know, putting together groups of these little girls that are no older than 14, you know, and being paraded in front of these white men, in order to get defiled. And so the amount of violence that the average Dominican is encountering right now at the hands of patriarchal family, sorry, allegorical families, what I meant to say, of allegorical families, of white European owned companies. It's very alarming.
Which
And you don't
don't
see
pay
these
taxes.
yeah, and you don't see these Dominicans that are super nationalist, Dominican this, Dominican that, rising up with the same type of vigor and energy that they're rising up against us whenever we're talking about solidarity towards other Black bodies.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I really appreciate that, because once you realize like the facts of what actually is going on in the country, you realize how, and like Haitians are drummed up to be un cuco, right?
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that there are, that there are not pressing like, not, I wouldn't say problems with immigration, but they're not pressing concerns that need to be addressed, right? But it has to come from a place of like, how do we think about the sustainability of this island for the 20, 30, 40 million people that are going to live in it, right? How
Right.
do we think about our food system? Isanet, you've been researching the Dominican food system, right? Maybelline, you know a lot about the medical system, right? Alexis, there's the spiritual strength of our people, right? How do we sustain our island in those ways, right? Because nationalism is not going to feed you, right? Once climate change happens, right, which is already happening, we're seeing droughts like we've never seen before in the country. Your nationalism and your anti-Haitianism is not going to feed you. It's not going to protect you, right? So how do we begin to envision some solutions, right, for the future of our island? And I claim it as my own, right? I live in the diaspora. I speak English, pero esa es mi tierra. Like, that's where my grandmother was born, her grandmother, all my people, right? That is our land. My grandmother farmed that land, right? That is my space too, right? So with that, like, I really want to raise up, how do you envision the future of the island, right? With solidarity between Dominicans and Haitians, knowing that we have struggles, right, that are real, that stem from colonialism, stem from imperialism.
Yeah,
do you see us going?
Thank you for bringing that up. And I think there's lots of people in the comments that are like, what's your solution? What's your solution? So if we can all, I mean, if there's anything also that we want to share around like solution, whatever that means.
Right.
As we answer this question.
Well, solutions, we need to understand the power of group economics. We need to understand the power of actual financial literacy. We need to understand the power of land ownership. We need to understand the power behind righteous education. And I'm sure that Alexis can also talk about this. We need to understand the power of ancestral connection and spiritual balance. So if we are a broken people operating out of hurt and operating out of fear, because that's a lot of the thing that's one of the biggest things that drives these nationalists is, fear mongering. They love to instill fear in the average Dominican. And so proper education, and actually giving people access to truth, to facts, because that's another thing. Truth is relative to a lot of these people. They're literally operating on alternative facts. And so I think that we need, as in Saudi, you touched about this on this earlier, us as Americanized Dominicans, which they love to highlight, we are in a position of privilege and in a position of actual power to be able to go back and affect the type of change that we want to see. So us as Dominicans in other places where we have more financial mobility and we have access to the information that maybe someone who is working, on a sugarcane field doesn't have access to. us having the willingness to go back to our own country and create access for these people, for our people to understand and to learn and to also, help and support the work that's already being done. Because you mentioned something that's very, very important is for us to not feed into this Americanized savior complex where we think that we're going to go, I'm American and I know better and we're going to come and fix our land. There's so many beautiful people doing the work actively right now as we're speaking that have never left the Dominican Republic, that were born and raised there, and that are actively doing this kind of work. So, through solidarity, through love, through, edifying ourselves first and understanding who we are, our actual ancestors, where we are and why we are here is probably one of the biggest things that we need to challenge each other on, to grow as people. If we're hurt people. And so if we're hurting and if we're ignorant and if we're operating out of fear and ignorance, we're never going to move forward the way that we would want to see our country be. And so I think that that's basically it. Having people such as you three phenomenal human beings. I feel like honored to even be on this like call and talking to you guys, to like talk to people like you guys talking about I want to go to DR and help with reframing the education system, and then you're talking about I want to go to DR and talk about food insecurity and agriculture, and then you're talking about doing work with reframing the way that people view themselves through their African spirituality and through their spirituality in general, and balancing themselves as human beings. These are crucial pillars of any civilization that's going to move forward, any community that's going to actually flourish and do good things. And so I'm glad that somebody asked that question, because we are doing the work. A lot of times they don't see us doing it and we're doing it behind closed doors. And that's a question that I think every Dominican needs to ask themselves. Okay, we see the problem now. How are we going to fix it? So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think since embarking on this idea of land ownership, I've been doing a lot of research on what land ownership looks like in the Dominican Republic, and it's like we're mentioning, it's white controlled. And so if you go and look up any real estate website for the Dominican Republic, the majority of things that pop up are white people from different countries, from both Europe and the US and Canada. And so that's alarming. I think also, so my experience of living in the Dominican Republic after college was living in Cabarete. And I mean, my experience was all white owned businesses. And so it's very important that as Dominicans who go back to vacation or to stay for a long amount of time, anyone that visits the Dominican Republic, to really like funnel our money into local Dominican businesses, and really stay away from the white-owned, European-owned businesses, which can be like really hard. I know, like for my family specifically, we really love the all-inclusive resorts because it's like the most affordable for like a group vacation, but like really stay away from those, because not only do they exploit their workers, but they're also selling this cultural experience to tourists that is not real. And then they leave thinking they have like this immersive cultural experience that is not true. So yeah, funneling money into local pockets, understanding land laws, and understanding gentrification in the Dominican Republic. I'm sure they wouldn't describe it that way, but something around that. And also connecting and supporting the organizations that are already doing really important work here. I'm just gonna highlight the work of CONAMUCA, Confederación Nacional de Mujeres Campesinas, who's really doing important work around agroecologia in the Dominican Republic, really supporting local campesina women, many of them who are visibly Black Dominican women, by doing schools of agroecology. And also they've been doing some really great work to support women that have experienced domestic violence in the Dominican Republic, and also the what's the thing? Marcha Verde also. They've been doing really important work with that. So there's definitely work being done. And like all of this what I'm talking about is not necessarily like connected to this hashtag, but it's more connected to that there is work happening and solutions being created. And if you really want to point the finger at who is damaging and like stealing, it is not Haitians, it's not Dominican Haitians, or at least not to the volume that these people are claiming that is happening. But like the real power, which is in the land, like land is power, is the only thing that the Haitians are doing is working it. And after they work it, a lot of the landowners who are either like white Dominicans or foreigners are reporting them to immigration so they don't have to pay them, which is something happens often, or they don't get their pensions paid. And so there's a lot of violence happening, not only to Dominican Haitians, but also dark-skinned Dominican men and dark-skinned Dominican women. So all these issues are interconnected. And so, yeah, just pay attention and like support the organizations that are on the ground in the DR doing the work, and like stay vigilant of the organizations that are claiming to do the work, but are being led by white saviors, which was my experience with the organization I worked at when I was there.
Absolutely. Oh, to highlight a couple of things, a couple of organizations that I also know of, La Fábrica Contemporánea.
Yes.
In La Capital.
Santo Domingo.
Yes, that is literally an oasis and one of the most beautiful safe spaces for Dominicans of the LGBTQ plus community. And they do such a phenomenal work when it comes to, lending their space to create that kind of like safe haven for people to just genuinely be who they are. The homophobia that exists in the Dominican Republic, the amount of young queer people that are continuously being beaten by people in their community and sometimes even lose their life is insane. And also, the amount of women that are continuously disrespected after being forced into sex working, then also, get discriminated against and have a lot of violence within their inner circle, whether it be through their family or through their peers. And La Fábrica Contemporánea lends such a beautiful space for them to feel, safe and at home, and does a lot of workshop, partnership with people doing that kind of work in the community as well. Also, the Kalalu, La Escuela Kalalu, they do phenomenal work at teaching young Black women about how beautiful they are and combating these Eurocentric ideologies of, pelo malo, and don't be out in the sun for too long, or you can't practice your African spirituality, or you're a devil worshiper. And so, yeah, Escuela Kalalu by Marilyn Gallardo, beautiful woman. Her and her sister do amazing work. And also La Gran Mawon is using their platform. Mítico is doing some phenomenal work in La Capital and in the different batallas. Right now, he's doing restorative work to try and save El Gaga de las Cejas, where he's using his platform through music to talk about food insecurity, to talk about police brutality, to talk about anti-Haitian rhetoric, to talk about the demonization of Black Dominicans who still practice African spirituality. So yeah, thank you for highlighting these beautiful people who are doing the work in the Dominican Republic. So yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I would just add really, really briefly that I think in addition to that, there's really important work for us, for those of us who are living in diaspora to do as well. For those of us that are living here to do the work of building with our people here and having these conversations, use the hashtag and other opportunities like that as conversation starters, as invitations into like, let's dig into this together. The hashtag Real Dominicans Are Not Anti-Haitian and the centering around Independence Day is to have, it's not to deny that the 22-year unification happened, right? It's not to deny that for those 22 years, that island was won under Haitian flag. It's not to say that that didn't happen, but it's to say, what does it mean that is what we choose to celebrate as our independence every year, and not independence from hundreds of years of Spanish colonization, or independence from multiple US invasions, or independence from Spain recolonizing the island, or, you know, what does it mean about who we say that we are, that is what we're choosing to uplift, right? And using that as an entry point, right? So we're not doing this work ahistorically either, right? Because things are as they are because of the history that has shaped us, right? And so we need to be doing that work of also looking back as we're fighting for the future that we want to see in our midst. So if you're here and you're living in the States, there are groups that you can connect with here in Culture Company. We are all Dominican. Dominicans Love Haitian movement. There are many of us out here, and that was part of the intention of the hashtag too, is that we can sometimes be made to feel like it's just, you know, we're like a small group of people that are feeling this way and are doing this work and are committed to seeing things change on the island and in diaspora. But actually we are so many, and we're so powerful, and we're doing such incredible work in so many different places. So just stay connected. Social media has made it easier than ever, right? But let's build with each other in person, right? Like go out, grab food, like build with deep relationships so that we can actually be, you know, investing in one another and building relationships with folks on the island too, right? Because the reality is that the folks that are fighting on the front line on the island are being exposed to risks that we are not.
Yeah.
Right? And so we have a responsibility to that, and we have an accountability to that, right? And so we need to take up stances when we have to and speak up, right? And also uplift what's happening there, right? Because so that, you know, folks are not in a place where anything could happen to them and no one would know, right? O pueden decir que fue cualquier cosa que pasó, right? Because we are uplifting that work is happening and those people's lives matter, and that we know that they're fighting for us as well, even though we might be living here. It's a real deep solidarity work being called for here.
Yeah. Saudi, I wanted you to maybe share, like, what would be a day for us to celebrate the pride that we feel and feeling in being Dominican? Because I think I saw someone give some feedback around the hashtag, around people that may just be coming new to this information about this independence, that may have been celebrating their independence their whole life, not even knowing what independence they were celebrating, and are like, you're taking my favorite holiday away.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, what is a day that we can use to really have pride in our Dominican culture and identity that is not connected to February 27th.
Yeah. Okay. So my name is not Paris Jones, but that's okay. My name is Saudi. But so there are many days that people can use, right? You have August 9th, correct me if I'm wrong, which is, I actually want to look this up because I don't want to mess up. But it's the Restauración, right? It's the date when Spain was officially kicked off the island, right? So what ends up happening, right? Just a quick timeline. You have 1844, right? You have a period of kind of like, you know, not too much happening with the Dominican Republic. And then you have, you know, a president, Pedro Santana, who comes and wants to actually sell the country back to Haiti, sell the country back to Spain, to pay, essentially to absolve himself of debt, right? So you have this kind of like selling the country back, basically. That's what happens. Maybe that's where you get the term Vende Patria from, right? And so the people of the country decide, we're actually going to rise up. We're not going to allow this, you know, we're not going to allow our country to be sold back, or our island to be sold back to our colonizers. who had come back and said, we want to re-enslave the people of this island because sugar is doing really well in Spain. Sorry, sugar is doing really well in Cuba and Puerto Rico. So we want to have the same volume of production, right? Slavery didn't end in Brazil till 1888, right? So there's a possibility for enslavement to have happened again on our island, right? And people did not allow that. The campesinos, right? The people who have gotten left behind, the people who are marginal, right? People whose land was stolen, the mothers, the children, they all rose up and said, we're actually going to defend our island through a guerrilla war. And this is the Restauración, which does not receive nearly as much attention, right? It doesn't have, you know, these holidays are like dramas that you read, that you like repeat over and over again, like Alexis was saying, right? That holiday says we are independent from Spain, right? It doesn't have the same value to the Dominican state. Really needs to kind of like keep up this narrative of an endless racial tension, an endless ethnic tension in the island. So, you know, you can celebrate that as a holiday. It happens to be around the same time as the Dominican Day Parade in New York City. So if you know, World Dominican always comes out around that time, right? So that's an opportunity also to celebrate that's not tied to a colonized history or a history that has been distorted. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna look up the actual official date, okay?
So I think we can actually then start wrapping up because it's 8:15. And there were, I do see a lot of questions that folks have on the comment box, and so just wanted to come here to just the purpose of this live was to share why we were putting out this hashtag campaign, that it is impossible to share all the history and information in this 1 hour of Facebook Live, but that there is a resource page on inculture.co, correct, Alexis?
Yep, if you just go to the website, inculture.co, let me just make sure I get it right.
Yeah, and also
.org. There is a reading list that is fantastic. I mean, a phenomenal reading list that takes you through the timeline of, you know, the histories of both sides of the island, and you can go really deep into any of the things that you've heard just a little tiny bit about in this conversation. There are other resources on there. There's a really beautiful article that Saudi published recently for Dominicans that are trying to have these conversations in our communities and how to do that in a powerful and ethical way, in a way that really like allows us to meet the goals of those conversations. Saudi, that was powerful. Shout out to you for that. There are tons of resources on InCulture Co. Like I mentioned earlier, the other organizations that we named also have powerful resources on their websites and on their social media accounts that you can go in deeper into any of these topics.
Yeah. Oh, and if any of you are, you know, wondering if there's any type of information that you can gather that is not in English, like I mentioned before, Mítico from La Grama One actually created a platform called Pol Negro. Pol, like with the L. Very Dominican of him. Called Pol Negro, and I believe that he has it both on Facebook and on Instagram, and it's basically him gaining information through pages such as InCulture Co, and then through Quisqueya Libre. He has, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Henry from Quisqueya Libre. He's done some work with La Grama One, and so he uses Cornell's library to funnel information that's only found in like Ivy League school libraries, and finds those kind of books that are out of circulation in DR, and brings them to Mítico, and then Mítico either translates them or publishes them on Pol Negro for Dominicans to be able to have access to this kind of information in Spanish.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And I want to address a few of the comments, right? There we go. In a 1 hour Facebook conversation, we can't address the entire history of the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and even before they were called those things, right? But what we do have is a platform called Uncultured Co, where we have all the resources you could possibly want, right? To analyze every minute detail of the history of these places. So, in this conversation, we can't analyze all of it. We don't come with an agenda. We are not funded by George Soros or whoever. There's a question. Yeah, I know, right? Like George Soros is mad busy. Like, ese tipo está, mira, en cada plato, moviendo cada cuchara, because he's everywhere, right? No, I wish I had some George Soros money. I don't. Right?
There we go.
We're out here trying to have GoFundMes and stuff because we don't have enough money to do this work, and they're over here calling.
Yeah, so it's like, no, we're not, funded by anyone. And yes, we could take time to explain all of this history, but we actually have resources. Like Uncultured Co publishes posts on a daily basis where you can get this information, right? And we cite our sources, right? Unlike our, nationalists, counter campaigners, they're citing sources that were written during the Trujillo dictatorship, right? Of course, Trujillo's gonna write a history that benefits his narrative and his story, right? These are the primary sources, right? It's not till now, or actually people have been doing this work for a minute. Dominican radical historians have been doing this work, but now we have availability also in English, right? For people in the diaspora, scholars whose work is being published literally now, right? So we have the information, and we have the archives. You can go look at them, right? We can't continue to repeat the same narrative over and over again that was crafted during the reign of a genocidal maniac, right? Yeah.
Right.
You said something really nice about him. You can just call him a genocidal maniac. I have other adjectives I can use.
But that's really important, and it's not just Trujillo, right? Like, I mean, I think this came up earlier in the conversation. Like, history is a contested field always, right? These narratives are always a point of view from a particular perspective, serving particular interests, and so we need to really take a critical lens to these stories that we've been taught about our history, and see like who is telling these narratives and what purpose are they meant to serve, right? Because the bottom line is that anti-Haitianismo is a tool. It has always been a tool. It is a tool, right? And it is meant to, there's a lot of comments I just took a quick look at, and it's wild out there. But there are a lot of talking about feelings, right? They're talking so much about feelings, but the reality is, right, in order to exploit and oppress a people, you first have to dehumanize them, right? And that is what this is. That is part of the role that this shapes, right? Is fomenting a hatred in the Dominican people, fomenting a notion of el cuco haitiano, right? Fomenting the story of this perpetual threat of invasion, right? In order to dehumanize a people so that you can create a labor force, right? So that you can then be having conversations like the one that are being had right now about militarizing the border using Israeli technology. You feel me? Like, you cannot do any of that without first dehumanizing a people. And that is the function of these historical narratives, right? And so for that reason, we have to take we cannot just be like, I don't fuck it. Let's just do it. Independence Day is so cute. Like, it's so fun. Let's just go out there. No, actually, every time we do that, we are cementing that narrative into what it means to be Dominican. And so that is part of the role of this hashtag, is to say, again, who are we choosing to be? Right, and what are the historical narratives that we're uplifting? Stories that have been told, that have been hidden from us or taken from us. The spiritual our inheritance. Right. All of this is a part of what we're invoking with this hashtag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to say before, I know we're about to wrap up, but an important thing I want to lift up is that there are ways to support this work. And if you are inspired by what you're hearing and seeing, and what you've been seeing on the social media accounts, if you've been inspired by the conversations that are happening inside of this hashtag, please support this work. Mm-hmm. One of the major ways that you can do that is we're having a fundraiser gala at the end of March 30th at Grand Champs in Brooklyn. it would be amazing to see everybody that's on this live right now at that fundraiser. You can purchase a ticket or make a donation or just support, the Work of Enculture Company or any of these organizations that we've named so that we can continue to expand and build on this work, because it is critical work. It is hard work. It takes a lot of time to generate all the content that you see on the pages. Every little bit that folks can contribute, it really, really goes a long way. So we just want to lift up the opportunities to support.
Absolutely. And to those of you who don't necessarily agree and don't want to help us fundraise and don't want to participate, then I have one word for you: contextualization. You guys need to learn to read. You said something that was very, very important: to read books and actually understand what was the intent behind the people that published that book. Who were these people, and why was the narrative written in the way that it was? Okay, because if you're talking to me about books that were vetted and published by these allegorical entities and families in positions of power who want to perpetuate the idea of España being our, mother country, and you go to the colonial zone and you don't see one Black Dominican statue erected, but then you have Fray de las Casas, who's single-handedly the man responsible for the transatlantic slave trade, because he decided that Taino Indians finally did have a soul after boiling them in calderones, and he decided, maybe now that we have basically annihilated all of the Tainos on the island, we should go and export all of the Africans that we are already oppressing on their land and bringing them over to our island. And so learn context, understand the why, question where these narratives are coming from. Don't just blindly follow things just because your 5th grade history teacher in DR taught you this bullshit that Trujillo decided to finance and publish through all of these supposed pseudo historians that continuously perpetuate this whitewashed narrative of what Dominicanidad is supposed to be. And so if you want to be a real Dominican who is for Dominicanidad, then do your due diligence and read. Actually research. And don't research just from one specific area.
All right. This was awesome. Does anyone have any last thoughts, comments, anything else? We uplifted the I put up the GoFundMe for Decolonizing Hispaniola. That's literally the only space where Dominicans and Haitians are in the room together, breaking down a lot of myths that have been constructed for us. I don't like people talking for me, okay? I don't like people talking for me. I have a voice. We all have a voice and a responsibility. And this is the only space where that's happening. So we want to make sure that continues. And we're being requested all over the East Coast, right? Soon enough, we'll hopefully be going international, doing this work in our communities in the DR. So, we want to make sure that this continues, right? If you're really invested in this conversation, please support us via GoFundMe. Come to our fundraiser. And that's the last thing I think I'm going to say. But does anyone have any last thoughts, comments?
Thank you. You're awesome.
Keep posting your pics. Keep using the hashtag. Let's keep building. This is really only the beginning. So keep on sharing it with your folks. Invite more folks into this movement. And pa'lante.
And take care of yourselves while you do that. This work can be really hard sometimes. So I know after this, I'm gonna do some self-care because the comments, the trolls, this is about feelings. So we're not gonna lie, it's about feelings and it's about facts too. So definitely take care of yourselves as you do this work.
For sure. Thank you all so much. Thank you. I appreciate you. And I'll see you very soon. Thank you all who came to listen and all the comments. We really appreciate all of you. And have a good night. Thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.